Hello, I'm Riley, and this is the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Okay, just going to be a quick episode this week as well. Again, still busy with the holiday season. I'm going to jump straight into first segment, still on the skills and leaning towards the resolution mechanic theme. I'm going to talk about a system that I'm going to try out in my next game. I think I'm going to use a roll under system, and I still need to decide if I'm going to use a 1d20 roll under or the 3d6, 4d6, 5d6 system that sort of adding d6 as it's harder. The statistics on that are a little bit complicated, and I need to think about that a little bit more. I might do a further episode on that. For the example, I'll just assume I'm going to do a 1d20. So what is roll under? Just a quick recap. You've got your attributes typically between 3 and 18, and let's say you've got a strength of 14 and you try and attempt some feat of strength. There's not rules for that already. DM might call for a roll under check. So they get you to roll a 1d20, and if you roll under 14, you succeeded. If you roll over, you failed. And there's some variation where sometimes if you roll under or equal to, so 14 might succeed or it might not, depending on the system. I'm leaning towards equal to or under. So the rules variation on that I'd like to try out is a pushing mechanic, wherein if you fail by a certain amount, you can spend that much strength or spend that much of the attribute to succeed. So if you roll a 16, which is 2 over the 14 strength, you can spend 2 strength to succeed. Your strength is reduced to 12, and that would come back with a week's rest or whatever healing mechanic. The things that I like about this are it adds another decision point for players, a risk reward thing that they can add. Makes characters a little bit more heroic, which I don't mind, and it can force some downtime activities. I quite like enforcing it like a longer healing period so that players get to engage with some other aspects of the game rather than just going into dungeons. Magic research or just standard research, carousing, social, political game. If you're in a city, it's also another risk reward thing. If you're only half healed, do you head back out? If there's something that's time critical, maybe you do. So it's a pretty cool system, I think, for be simple, but adds some complexity and player choice there. I'd be interested to hear if people have thoughts on that, or if they've used something similar, or if there's a rule system that does that. Call in, let me know, or send me a message and let me know. That's it for that segment. I'm going to jump into talking about thoughts on my narrative war game. So, narrative war game. I think that will be the topic of my next episode, full length, where I'll go into some discussion about the logistics and rules that I'm going to use to run that. I think originally I said that I was going to run using a system called Turnip 28, which I still think is a great system, but I've decided to move on. The reason for that is I was thinking, why am I running a narrative war game? What am I trying to get out of it? And as I think I said in my first episode about it, was I'm trying to improve my knowledge and experience to better run role-playing game campaigns. And so I want a system that translates well between a role-playing game and a war game. That's not a necessity, but that's what I would like. And I had wanted to run using Forbidden Psalm, which is a Morkborg uh, skirmish war game rule set. But I just missed the Kickstarter. I don't want to go back and buy the old rules when a new cleaned up and combined edition's coming out. But I also don't want to wait. And then it hit me. I was driving yesterday, which I don't get to do very much anymore, but it's a good opportunity to think, I guess, that there's a perfect system, and it's an old one, and 10 points for if you guessed it before I announce it, but it's Chainmail. So that's what I'm going to be using. It maps really well to D&D, D&D specifically, and being the 50th anniversary next year, system that I want to run, bring to the game shop that I play at, hopefully, or at least play online with some people. And so getting some experience using Chainmail is helpful in that as well. And I'll cover exactly how I'm going to use that. I mean, it's got a point system and whatnot. I'll detail sort of army creation rules that I'll be using with Chainmail in next week's episode. But just a small little announcement for anyone that's following along, I guess. Product spotlight. Following on the theme of Chainmail, I came across I don't. I'm trying to think of what to call it. I'll just read what they call it, I guess. An implementation of the Avalon Hill game, Outdoor Survival. A user on Board Game Geek has recreated and reinterpreted Outdoor Survival and put together a bunch of digital assets to run the game. And so, again, just reading from the page here, has a PDF which contains the rules, which have been restructured and rewritten with a few more examples. It's got charts to help you run the game, a counter sheet so you can cut out all the little counters, and the actual board. And I went out and sent the digital files off to a local printer and got them back, cut them out, and put them on some cardboard. I can say that it looks very similar, but it's different to the original art from what I can tell. It still looks really cool, and it cost me a lot less than eBay prices. I haven't really dug into the actual rules, but I'll put a link to Board Game Geek article listing for this. You should, if you're interested, you should check it out. Again, 50th anniversary of the original game. I would like to play using Chainmail and Outdoor Survival, so I think this will be the easiest way to actually get it to a physical table for me. And jumping into content shoutouts. First up, I've got a couple of blog posts. A blog from Silverarm Press details a sort of world building magic item sandbox system. Sort of ties into some of the conversation that Jason has been having on his podcast about is D&D post-apocalyptic. They can explain it much better than I can. So check out the blog post by Silverarm Press. A cool article on the Rolled It Out blog, social skills, attributes, and saving throws. Ties into what I've sort of been talking about in previous episodes about skills, specifically looking at how to lay out some social conflict in role playing. Check that out. Again, they're explaining it better than I can. Onto some more Dungeon 23 talk. Zarkov Kowalski has published a Dungeon 23 roundup, which looks like a compilation of all their Dungeon 23 entries on their Patreon. It's a free post. I'll link to that. I haven't really checked out all of it because, I mean, that's 365 rooms. Looking at one room, details look super interesting. The art for it is pretty nice. And, I mean, Zarkov's work is normally of really high quality. So definitely check it out and check out their other work as well. And on a similar theme of dungeons, the one-page dungeon compendium for the 2023, which is basically a collection of all the entries to the one-page dungeon contest, has just come out on drive-through. I've only just picked this up at the time of recording, so I haven't had a good look. But previous years are great. It's a great source of small little dungeons that you can whip out when you need them. So I'll put a link to that as well. Go check that out. On to podcasts. Jason over at the Nerds RPG Variety Cast hosted his last movie Monday, passing on to another host. But he covered Conan for Christmas. Great movie, great discussion. Taylor over at the Whispering GM podcast put out an episode on adversarial players. Came out prior to my last episode, but I don't think I included it there. Listened to it afterwards, and really great discussion. Daniel over at Bandit's Keep put out a episode on meaningful choices in combat, detailing how he's handling or is continuing to develop his Unchained system and how the various different types of combat play in, relevant to me deciding to use Chainmail for my narrative war game. I think that might have sparked it, to be honest, hearing a conversation about Chainmail. And you might have to forgive me for the pronunciation here. Taimolji put out a podcast on the difference between Game Master and player. Go check that out. That is it for this week. I said next week, I think it'll be jumping into the logistics of my narrative war game. Try to get that up and running as soon as possible, but that should detail how I'm going to go about it. I'm mainly going to do that episode so that I actually do the work. Okay, I've got a couple of callers this week. I'll just let them take it away. First up, Mirke from the Mirke the Meek podcast.
Hey, Riley. It's certainly interesting how these skills keep coming up across several podcasts. So I guess it's a pretty interesting topic. I feel a podcast coming on myself. But when you lump them together into two categories, of course, it's a generalization, but, skill-based versus class-based systems, I immediately thought of, surprise, surprise, Mouse Ritter, and also Knave, which you don't have skills and you don't have a class either. your character is defined by their inventory, and that's that. Well, actually, their skill system is ability based too. If you're attempting something, you roll the requisite skill check, and it's either roll 15 or roll under, depending on which game you're playing. And your inventory can give you advantage or disadvantage. So yeah, it's got some similarities, but I guess the main difference is you choose your skills once and advance them, or choose more at level up or whatever. And same with class, you just choose your class. But with inventory, you can switch that out regularly and customize your character. Just one other thought that I was having as you were talking about how the character with the skill tends to be pushed forward and ends up doing that task all the time. I find that even if you don't have like the skills, like a system of skills, the person with the highest attribute tends to be pushed forward, the highest attribute that's going to be making that check. So it's hard to avoid. I think the players need to be very intentional about just letting everybody take their shot, be in the spotlight, whatever. I think that's easier for like very narrative, story driven players to handle, as opposed to um, you know people that want to win, I suppose. Or um, yeah, I don't know. I tend to fall into that second group. I don't necessarily want to win, but you can't win in an RPG. But I do like to succeed, and so of course I'm going to try to do what's optimal based on my character. So I don't know. Random thought. Use it how you will. But yeah, have a great holiday season, and I will talk to you later. Take care.
Okay, firstly, thanks heaps for the call. Love to hear your thoughts on skills. Certainly hot topic at the moment. It goes in and out of flavor. I think that's the why it's such a popular topic is that it's really handles everything else outside combat. And depending on the style of game you're playing, that's quite a bit of the game. Great point on me missing the sort of inventory based or item based skill systems. Totally missed that in the when I described class versus skill based systems. Certainly a new phenomenon, I think, of games. I don't know of any sort of older classical games that are that way, but there's a whole bunch of them now, and certainly a system that I really like. So thanks for calling that out. And yeah, I'm definitely in that second camp. Not playing to win. Yeah, it's a game, and I want to play it well. And I talked about that in player skill and system mastery. I think, I mean, obviously, you still want characters to engage, even if they don't have the best skill, though, because it's not just a game of numbers. It's not a board game. It's a role playing game, and I think if we include context in the resolution system, we can resolve that. And to be honest, a conversation with your players is probably the better way of doing it. In addition to that, it is saying, "Hey, I'm going to adjudicate skills or conflict in a way that favors not just your character numbers. It's going to if you've got a good idea, come out with it. I'm going to favor the good idea. If context suits, your character is uniquely defined to be able to have an advantage in this situation that's not in the numbers on your character sheet. I'm going to reward that. If you have that conversation with your players, back that up with your actual resolution at the table. I think that can happen. And as I said, that's definitely it. It's not a system issue so much, but the system can exacerbate that issue. Perhaps it's definitely a combination of how the players are going to play, how the GM adjudicates, and the system. So yeah, it's a difficult one to overcome. With some careful play, I think we can improve on how that actually plays out at the table. Again, thanks for the call. Everyone, check out Mirke the Meek's podcast. He's been putting out episodes super frequently, and they're always super interesting. So yeah, check that out. Next up, I got a call from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Take it away.
Hey, Jason here. Just listened to episode 3. Great job. Consistency is huge in keeping people to listen. So good on you for putting something out, even if it's just a short one. And I love how the skill discussion wraps all the way back around, where at the very end you talk about how if there's not a skill, then the players have to figure out another way to do it, which takes us back to our earliest version of skills of the players just describing what they want to do and the GM deciding if that's going to work or not. So, interesting discussion. Lots and lots of ways to do it. And it probably really depends where you fall in that spectrum. How gamist are you? How much do you want the rules to handle it? And how much do you want it to be, played out between the GM and the players? So, all good. Great job. Keep up the great work. Look forward to great things in 2024. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the call, Jason. Yeah, as you say, I go into a lot of detail and skills and conflict resolution, but right at the end, so say you don't need so much of this. It's a conversation, and I mentioned that at the start of episode 2, I think, where my number one conflict resolution mechanic is conversation, and I mean that is the essence of role-playing games. We don't need much else. All that is extra to support the conversation, but we should never forget the conversation part. So, uh, good point. On skill systems, Jason detailed a system that he's going to use for an upcoming solo game that he'll be playing. I don't think he's going to like put out that as episodes or anything, but might have a recap. It's basically a X and 6, and you get +1 for relevant bonuses. You've got an item, class, high attribute, etc. It's a super flexible system. Fully endorse it. It's a great final point as well. I don't know if I actually explicitly said this at all in either of my episodes, but this is what I'm stating is an opinion, and it's the way that I like to play, not how it should be played. Probably presented a pretty strict system for how I like to play, and I definitely didn't want it to come across as gospel or anything. And I don't think Jason didn't accuse me of that, but it certainly reminded me to emphasize that just now. Play the game how you want to play it. There's no bad, wrong, fun, and try some different things out. You'll find a system that works for you. Again, thanks heaps for the call, Jason. Super appreciate you taking the time. Everyone should check out Jason's show. Although if you're listening to me, you probably already know Jason. So he's putting out a lot of great stuff. Lots more to come in 2024. So check that out. Details for the callers will be in the show notes. But I'll leave it there. That is the end of the show, and I'll be back next week to talk narrative war games plus whatever else comes up. Talk to you then. If anyone is listening, I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me via Spotify, SpeakPipe, Discord, or email. Details, along with everything I've talked about today, are in the show notes. Bye for now.